Over the past couple of years, fake news has become a big issue in our society. It has begun to divide us politically and socially, regardless of your party. Specifically, news stations like Fox News and CNN began to clash with each other, saying that their article is fake, and that they come back and say Fox would say that CNN's article is fake, and then CNN will turn around and say the same thing. It's almost turned into a just a political bashing on news networks. There's no agreement on who's correct. Instead of working and delivering correct information to the people of this country, instead they take their own opinions and run with their stories, regardless of whether or not the information is correct. A good example of this would be, let's say, Fox News host Sean Hannity. He's well known for willing to bash CNN anchors like Don Lemon for posting and reporting fake stories, and then Don Lemon will turn around and do the same exact thing to Sean Hannity. It's become such an issue in our society because the American citizens are not able to get correct information. In 2017, Kurt Wagner wrote an article. He's a very well-known writer for Vox. He wrote an article talking about how fake news has become an issue in our society. He said that only 50% of Americans relied on news from television in 2017. Now, we can only assume from that statistic that since 2017 that's even gotten worse. A lot of time people will turn to scholarly articles now to get their information because no one can really trust what actually comes from the news networks. In reality, what's happening these days is that news networks aren't even reporting what they should be reporting anymore. Instead of just turning to them bashing each other, reporting fake articles about each other. Regardless of your political party, I think everyone's in agreement that the political parties are not able to, agree on anything, and neither are the news networks. It's difficult for Fox News to report a story that's correct. It's difficult for CNN to report a story that's correct because in reality, not all the time everyone has the correct details, but they tend to side with their political party over what the actual truth of the story is. Another issue with fake news is that it has damaged people's careers over the past couple years. There's been multiple articles. Specifically, I want to talk about one. A high school student, Nick Sandmann, was reported by CNN for attacking and verbally assaulting a tribesman at a Trump rally. CNN ran with this article stating that Sandmann was talking bad about the tribesmen, yet they didn't have all the details regarding this article. So in reality, they were bashing Sandmann even though they didn't even know what actually happened. So Sandmann sued CNN for $250 million for a lawsuit for defamation and a couple other things for stating that they didn't know what the true story was. And it actually did come out that Sandmann wasn't at fault and that the Indian tribesman was actually leading on that group of Trump supporters to verbally assault him and whatnot, even though that wasn't even true. So the validity of the story that was reported by CNN, it was just, there was nothing there for it. And now you can argue that no one really knows what happened, even though they had video footage, but in reality, CNN reported an article about a young student who was bashing someone and it wasn't true. Now, that can destroy his career because his name's out there forever. If he goes to try and get a job interview or he's out for most likely just a job, if he's out trying to get a job, people are going to recognize that name and they're going to question if he's mature enough to have this job and a couple other things. So it can be very damaging to someone's career. The settlement reached for this case is unknown, but it's expected to be at least $1 million or seven figures. It's actually, the information hasn't been disclosed on how much he received, but regardless of how much money he receives, his name is now out there forever, and it's going to be very hard for him to get his name back, knowing people know who he is. When people talk about that name, I know who he is. Whether or not he was at fault or the tribesman was at fault, his name is out there for possibly having done something like that, and it can be very damaging to someone's career. It's truly going to follow him for the rest of his life no matter what he does. Another reason that fake news is a big issue in this country is that news networks are now receiving lower ratings after many lawsuits have raised concerns over the validity of the news reports. So CNN in its prime time of 8 to 11 p.m., like many Fox channels like Sean Hannity Live, Tucker Carlson, there's a couple other ones, Don Lemon has a show in prime time. They began to receive a lot lower ratings regardless, whether it's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. All these primetime shows with these hosts, they're all one-sided. No one's able to actually report a correct story. Now, if you're a Republican and are watching Fox News, let's say, because it is a Republican-based network, you're going to agree with what Sean Hannity says. If you're a Democrat, not saying every person is like this, but if you're a Democrat, you're more likely going to watch CNN over Fox News. And if you're a Republican, you're more likely to watch Fox News over CNN. Now, whichever channel you're watching, you're mostly going to likely think what they're saying is true. Now, regardless of your party, I think we're all in agreement that just because something comes up on one of those channels does not make it true. So in the primetime hours of 8 to 11 p.m., CNN was the 15th most watched channel. It used to be the third most watched channel over a year ago. Recently, after reports like the Salmon Report, their viewers' confidence has gone down in the stories, whether or not it was actually true. And that was an article written by a Fox News reporter, and these numbers were confirmed by like the Pew Research Center had a report on it as well, that, not even just CNN, but a lot of these channels have lost ratings due to these things. So CNN averaged 541,000 viewers per show within the last 2018 and 2019. It used to average 1.2 million viewers between the years 2015 to 2016. Now, that's a huge drop into something that's the reason for that being is that people don't feel confident in the news they're getting from that network. Now, there wasn't any reports out on Fox News viewers whether it went up or went down because Trump is president, but in reality, it has nothing to do with that. Whether it was Trump that's president or Hillary Clinton that was president for these past couple years, regardless, these news networks are still going to be one-sided, and it's a big problem in our society that needs to be solved. There's a couple solutions to this. People have come up with their own solutions, which is stop watching news. People feel more confident reading other things, whether it be on Facebook or other. I mean, there's no validity to those either, but people feel more confident in reading news that might come from other news sources now, whether that be from other networks that might not be politically biased, or they might be just reading up on their own on things that are happening and looking at the facts instead of watching a one-sided news network. It's a big issue in our society that has a couple solutions. Basically, what it all boils down to is that fake news has turned citizens against each other, and it's caused political disparage. People aren't able to trust news networks anymore, and it becomes an issue now. It causes things like arguments, whether it's in the workplace or at home or with your friends and family. Everyone has their own opinion, and not everyone, especially in families, is in agreement. Someone in your family might agree with Trump, and someone might agree with the Democratic Party. Regardless, people turn to news networks to get correct information to defend their side. If they're not able to do that, let's say you watch a Fox News show, and you're getting information from Sean Hannity, that doesn't necessarily make it true, nor does it make it true if you're watching CNN, watching Don Lemon report news. Unfortunately, what it's come down to is no one can really trust what comes from the news anymore. And also, it's really important that something be done about fake news, because it's going to destroy people's careers, whether people know it or not. If no facts are stated, like let's use that Sandman casing example again. If no facts are stated and it's all more of an opinion based, then how can you report an article that you don't even know whether it was fully true or not? It can also be damaging to the news anchor's career or the artist or publisher's career. They're not able to report correct news, and it looks badly on them. Not just the anchor, but the person who wrote the original article. Because a lot of the time, these news anchors take articles written by their colleagues, and it can be damaging for everyone, not just the person who they're writing about. In reality, I think that people need to just start watching less news and taking the time on their own to watch or read other news sources where they can feel comfortable with the answers that they're getting. Unfortunately, what it really has come to is that, as you can see from what I said before about the ratings, that people aren't able to trust the news network. And if it keeps going like this, people's ratings are going to keep going down. Less and less people are going to watch these TV shows, and eventually news is going to be a thing of the past, and people are going to start looking for other streams. We've seen over the past couple of years that what's become more popular are Facebook groups where people share information. There's plenty of groups on Facebook, Republican groups, Democratic groups, where people share information and their opinions and they feel comfortable. In reality, if you go on Facebook and you're talking with your friends on Facebook, not everyone's going to be in agreement in that, and people also often report fake information, whether it's about people or statistics, and it leads other people to think that things are correct or incorrect. Whether you agree with Trump or not, he's done good things, he's done bad things, and unfortunately, no news network can ever report the actual truth. It's not even just Trump, even past presidents. No news network is able to actually report the correct truth about what happened. And what that causes is issues between political parties, even in Congress and the Senate, where they're not able to get anything done because there's never any agreement. And I think news networks are a big attribute to that because they don't know how to report the correct news. So what really needs to happen is over the next couple of years, these new news networks either need to come together and start reporting the correct news regardless of whether or not they agree with what's happening. What's important is news networks were originally created to report information to the American people so that they can be educated. You can't educate citizens with false information, and it's a problem that needs to be solved within the next couple of years before this country is in complete disparage and no one can actually trust anything that comes from news networks anymore.